Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Catalyze Your Self. I am Gayatri, and today we are stepping into a conversation that every one of us has lived, even if we have not had the words for it. I am talking about those moments when something in us wanted to move forward, but something else quietly held us back. Today, we are exploring what it really means to break through our barriers. We've all been there. We have the idea in a meeting, but we hesitate to speak. We are exhausted, but we still push through. We're afraid to let something drop. We find ourselves apologizing for things that don't need apologies. We avoid a conversations we know matters, hoping the silence will keep the peace. These are not random quirks. They are barriers that live inside of each of us. They live in the way our nervous system tries to protect us. They live in the identities we've inherited from the world around us. Be smaller. Don't be too much. Your value is in what you produce, what you can provide, not who you are. When most of us think of barriers, we picture external blocks, the lack of resources, the people who don't support us, the systems around us that made things harder. And yes, those are real, but the most powerful barriers often live inside of us. They live in the way our mind and our nervous system work together. Our mind, as we know, is made up of three different parts: our cognition, the thoughts and the interpretations we create, our emotions, the feelings that rise and guide us, and the three sub-layers of our consciousness, which is the conscious, the subconscious, and the unconscious. All together, these three hold that deeper awareness that can integrate it all, and our nervous system. Our nervous system is our communication channel of our mind. It carries every signal, every thought, every feeling, every memory of what once kept us safe. And this intent of our nervous system to keep us safe can also become our barrier for growth and for our ability to flourish without even our intentional awareness of it. Breaking through our barriers is therefore not smashing through those barriers with more effort. It is about understanding them for what they are: nervous system patterns, conditioned identities, old protection strategies, and then creating the presence and steadiness to move differently. And that's what we will explore today. We will look at how barriers show up in everyday behaviors, what they really mean in the language of the mind and the nervous system, and how the SIRE model gives us a pathway to shift. So we are not forcing ourselves through walls, but freeing ourselves from patterns that no longer serve us. Because the barrier isn't you. The barrier is a pattern, and patterns can absolutely be changed. And if we look closely, many of the barriers that hold us back don't arrive in big dramatic moments. They show up in the smallest behaviors, things we do so often that we don't even question them anymore. Think about what happens when we over-prepare for a meeting. We spend hours perfecting our information, perfecting our slides, or even rehearsing our words, not because the task in itself really demanded it, but because our nervous system is telling us safety lives in perfection. Cognition is spinning stories of what if, Emotion is bracing for criticism, judgment, and consciousness gets pulled into old memories of when not being perfect once cost you something. The behavior looks like diligence, but underneath, it is a barrier, one that quietly is limiting your presence, your freedom, and your trust in yourself. Or maybe our barrier shows up in hesitation. We have something important to say, but we hold back. Cognition floods us with all types of reasons. It is not the right time. What if they don't agree? What if I'm misunderstood? Emotion carries that tension of possible rejection. And our nervous system remembers the moments from our past when our voice wasn't received well. And it signals us to stay silent. To the outside world, it could look like restraint. Inside, it's a barrier, one that keeps our truth locked away. Sometimes the barrier shows up in over-apologizing, saying, I'm sorry, before we've even had a chance to see if there's anything to be sorry for. This is because somewhere in our nervous system, apology has become the ticket to being likable, to be accepted, for belonging. And cognition jumps to smooth things over. Emotion braces for possible conflict. And our consciousness echoes an old belief. If I shrink myself, I'll be safe. What could look like humility is really a barrier of identity, a learned script that keeps us from standing in our full presence. And for many of us, the barrier is pushing through exhaustion. We keep going, we keep producing, we keep saying yes, even when our body and mind are telling us to stop. On the surface, it looks like strength, commitment, resilience. But underneath it, the nervous system has tied your worth to productivity. Cognition says, if I don't, I will fall behind. Emotion brings up fears of letting someone down. Consciousness holds an old identity. I am only valuable when I'm carrying it all. The barrier here is not ability or your capability. It's a safety pattern that confuses burnout with belonging. And here's the deeper truth in all of these examples. Barriers are not flaws in who we are. They are simply patterns our nervous system created to protect us. Patterns that once kept us safe, but over time became walls that limited our growth. And this is where breakthrough begins. Not by judging the behavior, not by forcing our way past it, but by learning to see the signal underneath, to recognize that the nervous system is simply doing its job, trying to protect us from a perceived threat. The work is not to fight that protection. The work is to bring enough presence and steadiness that we can choose differently in the exact same scenario. Another barrier many of us carry comes from identity itself. And identity isn't just what we know about ourselves. It is also our roles, our labels, and messages we have absorbed from the world around us. Some of those we've chosen, and others were just handed to us and we accepted it. Think about the times we softened our tone in a meeting so we don't sound too much, or when we laughed something off even though it stung, because we did not want to be seen as too sensitive, or when we said automatically, because somewhere along the way we learned that being valuable means being accommodating. And in those moments, our nervous system often rushes with its familiar signal: danger, don't stand out, don't disrupt, don't risk rejection. Your cognition is building that story. They will not respect me if I say this. They will not understand if I push back. An emotion carries the tension of being excluded, and our consciousness holds the echo of an old identity. I belong only if I shrink myself. So the breakthrough begins when we see that not every cue the nervous system sends us is a true threat. Sometimes what feels dangerous is really something unfamiliar, or something that had a certain outcome in the past, and it sits outside our comfort zone. Sometimes what feels like risk is simply the discomfort of stepping outside an old identity. And without realizing it, we confuse the signal of discomfort with a reality of danger. And this is why integration matters. And when we engage the SIRE model, we can start to see the discernment. With self-awareness, we notice when the nervous system is bracing, even if the actual moment is safe. With self-inspiration, we reconnect to why our integrity matters more than our comfort. With self-regulation, we steady our breath and body so we can test whether this is a threat or simply fear. With self-expression, we choose to speak with clarity, even when the message is not the favored one. And with self-reflection, we recognize over time what patterns are true protection and which are actually truth. And this is how we move past identity-based barriers. We don't shame ourselves for hesitating. We don't bulldoze through. We begin to gently separate what is a true threat from what is simply a nervous system echo of the past. And as we do, we reclaim more of who we are, not the identities we were given, but the identity we choose to live from with presence. When I look back at the barriers I have faced, I recognized I did not break through them by force. I broke through them when I allowed all parts of my mind, my thoughts, my emotions, my deeper awareness to work together instead of against each other. And that's what the SIRE model gave me, a way to integrate my mind so I could move through those barriers and not just crash into it. There was a season in my corporate life when I consistently overfunctioned. I carried more than my share. I stayed later than I should have, and I convinced myself it was because I was strong and dependable. The truth was, my nervous system had equated my value with carrying it all. Every time I thought about setting a boundary, I felt extremely stressed about it. And my inner voice kept telling me, if I choose anything less than my current pace, I will be seen as less. That was a barrier, not my actual capacity, but my nervous system's pattern. SIRE helped me find another way. With self-awareness, I began to notice the moments my body tensed before I said yes, even when I wanted to say no. With self-inspiration, I reconnected to why it mattered, not just for me, but for the people I was leading. I couldn't model sustainable leadership if I was constantly exhausted, physically and mentally. With self-regulation, I practiced pausing for the needed time before I responded so I could discern whether the request in front of me was truly urgent or just triggering an old reflex. With self-expression, I started saying, I can take this on, but not until next week. Or I do not have the bandwidth for this right this moment. And with self-reflection, I saw how much shifted. My nervous system slowly relaxed, and others began to respect my boundaries more, not less. And what struck me was how familiar it felt when I saw the same barriers show up in others, expressed the same or differently, but rooted in the same nervous system reflex. This was not just my singular experience. I've seen the same dynamic play out with leaders I've worked with and leaders I've coached. One executive believed his credibility depended on being the first to solve, to answer every question, the first in line. His nervous system had tied his worth to speed of response. When he began practicing the same rhythm, awareness of the trigger, inspiration anchored in his values, and regulation, and expression by inviting others to share first, and reflecting after every scenario, he noticed something shifting. The team trusted him more, not less. The very barrier he thought was keeping him safe was holding not only himself, but his team back. And the integration through Sire allowed him to see that very clearly. These experiences reinforced for me that breakthrough is not dramatic. Neither is it overnight. It isn't about one big moment of smashing through a wall. It is about consistent presence, returning again and again to the practices that helped me and the leaders I've worked with test whether what felt like danger was actually danger. And there are so many examples in our life that shows us the complexity of it all. Many of us have worked with a colleague who always, if not mostly, stays quiet or speaks the very last in a meeting. On the surface, it might look like lack of engagement or thoughtfulness, and it could be. They may be someone who processes deeply and needs time to integrate what is being said before offering their perspective. They may be neurodivergent with a natural rhythm that requires more space before expression, or they may be intentional about using their voice sparingly, speaking only when they feel what they have adds value. But there's also another layer that could be true. Through the SIRE model, we might notice something different. Their self-awareness may sense that tension of wanting to speak, but holding back. Their self-inspiration, their inner why, might not feel strong enough in that moment to outweigh the risk of being misunderstood. And their nervous system may be signaling threat, even if the environment itself is safe. The truth is, it can be one or all of these things. Sometimes the behavior is a reflection of personality, of intention, or of processing style. And sometimes it is a reflection of a barrier, a protection strategy shaped by past experiences learned by their nervous system. And sometimes it's all of it. And this is where breakthrough enters. Breakthrough doesn't mean forcing ourselves to speak sooner or labeling our silence as a problem by ourselves or by others. Breakthrough means creating that inner integration that helps us discern, is my hesitation a conscious choice, or is it a nervous system reflex, mistaking discomfort for danger? Many of us have that friend who always says yes. On the surface, it can look like generosity. It could be generosity. They may be genuinely someone who loves being dependable or genuinely feels joy in supporting others. Saying yes may be their way of living out care and connection. But it could also be a barrier. Their nervous system might equate safety with approval. Self-regulation may be overwhelmed by the anxiety of disappointing someone. Self-expression may be conditioned to equate a yes with belonging. The truth is, sometimes it's a conscious, value-driven choice. Other times, it's a protection pattern shaped from a long time ago. And in some cases, it's both. Breakthrough here is not about saying no to prove independence. It is about discerning. Am I saying yes from alignment, or am I saying yes because my system is bracing against some type of rejection? Many of us have that family member who always cracks a joke when things get serious. On the surface, it looks like lightheartedness, and it could be. Humor can be a wonderful way to ease tension, reminding us not to get swallowed up by heaviness. But sometimes humor is a shield. Self-awareness may notice rising vulnerability, but self-expression diverts into humor because somewhere along the way, seriousness felt unsafe. The nervous system may be confusing discomfort with danger, so laughter becomes the exit. Humor can be a gift and a protection. Breakthrough here is not about removing the humor, it's about asking, am I laughing to connect or am I laughing to escape? Integration allows humor to stay a gift without hiding what is real underneath. And many of us have known a high performer who never rests. On the surface, it looks like drive, ambition, resilience, and it could be. And some people genuinely thrive on momentum and effort, and it fuels their sense of aliveness. But it could also be a barrier of identity. Their nervous system may be tied to worth, to productivity. Self-inspiration may be fueled more by fear than vision. Self-reflection might rarely get space to flex. And what looks like strength may actually be exhaustion, carried as an identity. And often it's all of it. High performance can be energizing, and it can also mask depletion. Breakthrough here is not about giving up that ambition. It is about discerning. Am I moving from clarity or compulsion? Is this my chosen pace or a nervous system pattern that confuses exhaustion with value? We've seen some or all of these behaviors somewhere along the way. Many of us have lived them. And when we look at them through the lens of sire, we begin to soften our judgments, the harshness with which we view it, of ourselves and of others. We stop assuming the behavior is the whole story. We start to recognize when it's a conscious choice and when it's a nervous system barrier mistaking discomfort for threat. And that's where breakthrough begins, not in eliminating the behavior, but in discerning their source. Not every danger signal is a true danger. Sometimes it's an echo. Integration is what helps us know the difference and choose with presence. Having said all of that, one point is clear. A breakthrough is not something dramatic, that single moment that changed everything. True life does give us those moments, but most often, breakthrough does not look like a lightning bolt. It looks like a steady choice, a consistent choice to keep integrating. It's not about bulldozing past our own selves with more effort. And it's not about pushing harder, forcing our way through, or proving that we can outwork that barrier. In fact, that urgency, and when you push through, it's like a rubber band. It often snaps back and reinforces the very patterns we were trying to release. Breakthrough is so much quieter than that. It happens when we notice the signal of protection and pauses long enough to ask, is this a real threat or is it just my nervous system remembering an old one? Breakthrough is the presence that allows us to separate danger from discomfort, survival from growth. And there is a paradox. Breakthrough is rarely about eliminating the barrier. It is about changing our relationship to it. So even when hesitation still rises, our relationship to it changes. The instinct to overextend when it comes up, the nervous system will choose differently. When we are integrated, that pattern no longer defines us. We can now choose differently. Breakthrough is integration becoming visible. It's when our thoughts, our emotions, and our deeper awareness are no longer working in competition. It's when our nervous system is still doing its job, trying to keep us safe, but we are able to guide it with presence instead of just allowing it to flex its reflex. And when we practice this kind of breakthrough, we do not just free ourselves from old protection strategies. We begin to trust ourselves in a very new way. We start to see that what once felt like a wall is no longer existing. And that realization changes how we go forward with simply more steadiness and a deeper kind of freedom. Now we reach the close of our episode today, and I want to leave us with a reflection. Let's ask ourselves, where have I mistaken my nervous system's signal of discomfort as proof of danger? What becomes possible when I bring presence, when I integrate awareness, inspiration, regulation, expression, and reflection to gently shift my relationship with my patterns? Which of my everyday behaviors could be more about safety than truth? And what if every danger is only discomfort that I can grow through? Our breakthrough is not force. It's not smashing through resistance with effort. It is about clarity. It's about integration. It's about the clarity to see the barrier for what it is and the steadiness to choose differently and integrate ourselves. And once we begin to live that way, the next question naturally comes up. If I can move through these barriers with intention, what am I building with the freedom that follows? And that we will go into next in episode 27, where we focus on your intention designs your legacy. We'll step into the work of how our choices, the one we repeat, the ones we embody, shapes what outlives us. Thank you for joining me today. I'm Gayatri, and I'm grateful for the space we've shared. Until next time, keep noticing yours and others' barriers with compassion, and keep choosing integration with steadiness, and keep trusting that your breakthroughs are unfolding in quiet choices, in everyday presence, and in the life you're creating moment by moment.